Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere ake nei, just days before the 11th anniversary of the Pike River disaster, human remains are discovered in the sealed mine shaft. Police say there are at least 2 bodies, possibly 3, but they can't get them out and they're yet to be identified. So what does this mean for the investigation? The gates to Auckland open on December 15th, so is hell being unleashed or is the start of the summer fun here? Depends on who you talk to. The COVID response minister joins us live, and so does Hone Harawira. And we head to a region that relies on jaffas rolling into town. Odds and evens, bubbles too. No, it ain't a party game, it's actual school. Remember that? Catch us live on Sky Channel 83.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Kia ora, I'm Marama Tipole. 11 years after the Pike River disaster, human remains have been discovered in the mine. However, the police say they're too far into the workings to be retrieved. Images from boreholes drilled by the police show the remains of 2 bodies and possibly a third. Rowdy Durbridge, whose son Dan was working in the area where the remains can be seen, says the news has come as a shock.
It was sort of like bewilderment. Shock, horror, you know? And now I'm left with a sort of an emptiness, but it's not negative. It's it's a feeling I can't really describe.
Rowdy Durbridge says he understands there's a very high chance one of the bodies is his son's. Aucklanders can plan for Christmas and New Year more easily now. The Prime Minister has confirmed the region's border will be reopened from December the 15th to January the 17th. In making the announcement this afternoon, Jacinda Ardern said there would still be some requirements.
People travelling out of Auckland who have either been fully vaccinated or have a negative test 72 hours prior to departure will be able to leave Auckland and visit other parts of the country. This means you'll be able to enter or leave Auckland for any reason.
The police will be making spot checks on people crossing the border and fining rule breakers $1,000. Many Aucklanders say December the 15th can't come soon enough. People on the streets today told RNZ they're planning trips to Northland and Coromandel. This woman says she's looking forward to a short holiday wherever she can go, and she's thrilled with today's announcement.
It would have been nice to have been sooner, beginning of December, but we've waited this long and it'll be fine.
Tourism Industry Aotearoa Chief Executive Chris Roberts says the announcement is a huge relief. He says operators can now plan to hire staff, buy supplies and gear up their operations for summer. A man in his 60s has become the 3rd person in a week to die in hospital with COVID, while 4 other deaths in isolation over the past fortnight are still being investigated. The Health Ministry says the man tested positive after being admitted to North Shore Hospital with COVID symptoms 2 weeks ago and died yesterday. 194 new community cases have been reported today. Meanwhile, the government has also announced the whole country will move to the COVID traffic light system soon after November the 29th. COVID modeller Michael Plank says the change will inevitably spread the coronavirus throughout the country. 2 people have been arrested in relation to the homicide of a 5-year-old Bay of Plenty boy earlier this month. Malakai Subech died 11 days after being found injured at a Te Puna property. A 27-year-old Te Puna woman has been charged with willfully ill-treating a child, and a 37-year-old Tauranga woman has been charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice. Both women appeared briefly in the Tauranga District Court today and are due to reappear there tomorrow. An investigator says international gangs wanting to smuggle drugs often target people with legitimate jobs. 6 baggage handlers at Auckland Airport have been charged with importing and conspiring to import methamphetamine. 8 others, including 2 members of the King Cobra's gang, have been charged with drug-related offences. Bruce Berry from Customs says organised crime relies on the promise of easy money.
To survive, organised crime must subvert people and systems. These systems rely on trusted insiders, and so these are people with legitimate incomes, legitimate roles that are approached, usually for money, to facilitate such importations.
The police haven't ruled out making further arrests. It's 4 minutes past 5. New Zealand bowler Tim Southey says there is plenty of excitement about their tour of India despite bubble fatigue and losing the T20 World Cup final. The Black Habs play India in the first of 3 T20s in Jaipur early tomorrow, while New Zealand have had some T20 success in India. They've only ever won 2 tests there, the last in 1988.
It's an amazing place to play cricket, but it's also a tough place to play cricket. India have been a very strong side at home for a very long time. And I think the 2 places that are probably the hardest to play test cricket is Australia and India. So I think as players, you always want to do well in those tours.
Kane Williamson and Kyle Jamieson are being rested for the T20 series. Meanwhile, batsman Usman Khawaja has been recalled to Australia's Test squad for the Ashes series against England. Pace bowlers Michael Neser and Jai Richardson and spinner Mitchell Swepson are the uncapped players selected. 4-time Grand Slam winner Naomi Osaka is concerned about the whereabouts of fellow tennis player Peng Shuai, who has not been heard from since making sexual assault allegations against the former Chinese vice premier earlier this month. The governing bodies for women's and men's tennis are calling on China to investigate the claims. And the draft report into the Cycling NZ inquiry established after the death of Olympian Olivia Podmore has been delayed until February because of COVID restrictions. That's the news.
Marking 100 years of radio.
I've lived with this prediction that the demise of radio was just around the corner. It started with television in the early 60s and it's gone on forever, but it's not going to happen. Radio is as powerful as ever.
We've stayed the course.
Well, if you're standing chopping onions before dinner, radio is there, right there with you, and it opens your mind and it opens you to the world.
Here's to another 100 years with you. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday: Northland, Auckland, Waikato, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupō. A few showers until this evening, mostly fine tomorrow, but isolated afternoon showers in Bay of Plenty. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa mostly fine. Isolated showers about the ranges tomorrow afternoon and evening. Waitomo to Wellington, including Taihape, fine spells and isolated showers clearing tonight, but returning to Taihape tomorrow afternoon and evening. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, scattered showers developing with possible thunderstorms in Nelson today. Showers clearing in Nelson and coastal Marlborough and Canterbury tomorrow. Bulla and Westland, occasional showers, some heavy with isolated thunderstorms today. Fine spells increasing in Bulla tomorrow. For Otago, scattered showers with thunderstorms possible in North Otago clearing tonight and isolated showers in the east tomorrow. For Southland and Fiordland, generally cloudy with showers, but they'll be clearing in Southland tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy at times with brief rain for today. It's 5:07.
Thanks, Marama. Tēnā koutou katoa. No mai haere mai ki checkpoint i tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Aucklanders get a ticket to ride. The government's announced the Super City border will open on December 15 to two-way traffic if you're fully vaccinated or have a negative COVID test. We'll have more on that shortly. But we begin tonight on the West Coast, where the families of 29 Pike River miners are digesting news they've been waiting more than a decade to hear. This afternoon, Detective Inspector Peter Reid called a surprise media conference in Christchurch, revealing 2 boreholes had led them to an extraordinary discovery.
We've recovered some images from the boreholes that confirm 2 deaths, 2 bodies, and with the possibility of a 3rd body there as well. The images have been reviewed by pathologists, and they're taken from the furthest reaches of the mine, so they're the furthest area in the mine that you could be from the entrance, the portal area, and it's not possible for us to recover them.
Detective Inspector Peter Reid was unavailable to be interviewed on Checkpoint because he's travelling to the West Coast to meet with the families this evening. The images come just 2 days out from the 11th anniversary of the first explosion. Up to 8 men from the sea crew were understood to be manning the Alpine Bolter miner in the northwest corner of the mine, near the borehole where the images were taken. A family spokesperson said they were distraught at today's news as they wait to see if the bodies can be identified. Bernie Monk's son, Michael, wasn't working in that part of the mine, but he says news the bodies can't be recovered is a national disgrace. I asked him what he'd been told.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it's not as if they only found out today. That, where's the transparency on all this? I've been down this road before. I mean, if we had a look back in 2011 when, along with a lady that come and showed me the self-rescue box has been open and all the gear's gone, which means that not everyone died after the first explosion. And also, when we found 3 bodies laying in the drifts, we wouldn't have been told about that either. So it's been a continuously untransparent, information coming from one field to the other. Only through the pressure of the experts that we have got on and the team that are around me that's made them come to this conclusion and told us. But why tell us more or less 2 days before the 11th anniversary when we could have been told quite a few, I'd say, weeks ago?
Bernie, what do you know about who was working in this part of the mine?
Well, we know who they all were.
And how many men were there?
6. So where are the other 3 or 2 or 4?
Have you
Where are they?
Have you spoken, Bernie, to the families of the men that were working in that area?
No, I haven't. My wife and daughter have spoken to one and she's terribly upset.
So what are you wanting to come from this?
Well, I mean, Mr. Little, in his wisdom, has gone and sealed the mine up on us again. And when we frankly went up there, we actually went up there and stood at the gate and asked them not to seal the mine up till after the police had done their boreholes, and they still did it. So they just ignored us. And I'm just so frustrated with the way that this has been done. And for 10 years, I've just put, needles into us the whole time this has been going on. How can a national disgrace and of one of the biggest homicides in New Zealand's history just be covered up by this, by government departments, by your WorkSafes, by Mr. Little and the National Party as well? They just continuously try and flog us off, hoping to wear us out, that we'll never fight them to the end. Well, it's not going to happen. We're going to fight them to the end. We've got the SCADA data. Always tell the nation that we've got the truth. The reason why we haven't brought the truth out is we don't want to ruin the investigation that is getting done by the police, so that's why we haven't gone out public. And that's about it in a nutshell.
Bernie, what do you think that this discovery tells us?
Well, it tells us a couple of things. One, I haven't seen is, what I want to know is, did any of them have time to put their self-rescue gear on? Was the self-rescue gear anywhere near the people that they do see there? If so, we'll be able to gauge if he had it on or not. The other one is, where are the others? Now, we've always said that we know the explosion happened down where the fan is. That's why it was always our doing of going down the fan. Why don't they put a borehole down where the fresh air line comes through the coalfall into the mine, and let us see where all the bodies are that survived. Why don't they do that? I've asked them to do that, but every time I've written to them, I get no answer. So I don't know what to do. I'm lost.
Bernie, how long do you think these men survived for?
Well, if they survived the first explosion, someone turned the oxygen line off after the second. So you read from that. And we know he turned it off.
The police have said these bodies cannot be retrieved. Do you accept that?
No, I don't. Mind you, the police have. Let's not go down that avenue because I'm so frustrated, and I might say something that will upset them. Because every time I say it to them, they get upset.
Bernie, do you think they will be able to identify these men, for example,
Yes.
from what they were wearing and the roles
yes.
that they were in? I mean, how?
Yes, they will.
And how so, Bernie?
Oh, you can tell by the length of the bodies and the gear that they're working that they'll be working in. They'll be able to tell who they are.
Bernie, are you expecting to be shown the photos?
Well, I'll be asking why not.
And when
Listen, a lot of us people are pretty hardened to this now. When you've been at this 11 years at the coalface, nothing. The only people I see crying are the people that are doing the work.
So, Bernie, when are you expecting to meet with the police and see what information they do have?
Well, there is a possibility that there was supposed to be tomorrow night, but somebody told me there's a possibility of being shown tonight, but I don't know. So one way or the other it'll happen.
We understand the officer in charge is on his way now.
I bet he is.
And that was Bernie Monk. It is 5:15 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Aucklanders will be free to leave the city's boundaries from December the 15th, provided they carry a vaccine certificate or proof of a negative test. Those requirements will stay in place until the 17th of January, allowing for Christmas and Savard travel in and out of Tamaki Makaurau. There'll be random checks for those heading south out of the city and a $1,000 fine if you're caught breaking the rules. To the north, police will work with iwi to run the border. The government says people will be able to cross and Northlanders will have confidence there are checks in place. The government's also confirmed the whole country will likely step into the traffic light framework when Auckland does at or around the 29th of November. But which colour each region gets depends on the vaccination rates. Well, joining me now is the COVID-19 Response Minister, Chris Hipkins. Tēnā koe, Minister.
Good afternoon.
Why are Aucklanders having to wait till the 15th of December for the border to open? Why can't we move on the 29th of November?
Well, we want to get those vaccination rates up, not just across Auckland, but across the country as much as we can, as many of those second doses in as we can. We do want to see the country transitioned onto the traffic light framework before we do that, acknowledging that even with checks in place at the boundary, if the spot checks in place at the boundary, once we allow much greater movement across that Auckland boundary, it will almost inevitably see the spread of COVID into other parts of the country. So, yep, we'll have spot checks in place in order to try and minimise that and to try and prevent that, but we have to make sure the rest of the country is prepared for that.
So, despite the fact that Aucklanders have basically carried the can for the rest of the country for the past 3 months and really gone hard and got themselves vaccinated and will hit that target around the 29th of November, they're getting punished because the rest of the country can't get their act together?
No, not at all. In fact, Aucklanders are going to have a lot more freedom from shortly after the 29th, where they'll be able to do all of the things that they're looking forward to doing. They'll be able to get a haircut, they'll be able to go to a bar, they'll be able to go to a restaurant, they'll be able to re-engage with each other, they'll be able to go and visit friends at friends' houses. All of those things that people want to be able to do, they'll be able to do that, and the rest of the country will be still focused on getting its vaccination rates up, so that a couple of weeks later, when that boundary is eased and there's more movement and COVID-19, the risk of COVID-19 spreading through the rest of the country at that point does go up, the rest of the country will be prepared for that.
Okay, so those are the freedoms afforded by the traffic light system, right? Moving in at red. But can Auckland move before the 29th of November? Is there still hope that we could go up a step or down a level? I mean, you're due to review it again next week, so what are our prospects?
Oh, look, I wouldn't want to preempt that. Obviously, we have a look at that.
But you're not ruling it out. There's still a possibility we could shift.
Never rule anything in or out, but I think what we're trying to do is provide as much certainty to Aucklanders as we can in an uncertain time. And so by drawing some lines in the sand and saying, look, this is the date by which we expect to be moving around the traffic light framework, this is the date we expect to be moving around the boundary, then it does give people that certainty. They can start to plan for what they're going to do over the summer.
Yeah, but Minister, what I'm trying to establish is by giving that date of the 29th of November, are you ruling out the possibility of Auckland getting any more freedoms before then? Are we basically being told you're going to have to wait till the 29th?
Well, look, that's only a week and a half away.
It's a long time when you've been locked down for more than 3 months.
I fully understand that. I wouldn't rule out there being some further change between now and then, but I think people should be really, I'd encourage people to focus on that date, those 2 dates that we've put out there today.
We're getting questions already about what the significance of January 17th is. So we're required to be tested and vaccinated to move in and out of Auckland between 15 December and January 17th. What's happening on that date? What's the deal?
Oh, look, there's nothing particular about that date other than that it's about a month after we relax or allow greater movement across the boundary. This is about sort of containing risk. It's about slowing the spread of COVID-19. It is about making sure that we're reintegrating Auckland and the rest of the country in a managed way, rather than just sort of throwing off the shackles and letting COVID-19 do its thing.
So are you saying on January the 17th you will assess how that just over a month has gone, and if it hasn't gone well, we can expect more restrictions to come back on?
No, because at that point, the spread COVID will be out there, and so this is just about making sure that we're managing the transition.
So what is that date, 17 January, for then? For the government to review how it's gone?
No, that is the date on which the requirement the requirements for travel in and out of Auckland will disappear at that point, and Auckland and the rest of the country will become one country once again.
Okay, so when we move to the traffic light system, Auckland's going to enter on red, even though we've got some of the highest vaccination rates in the country, and other areas who have significantly poorer rates are going to be on red too. How's that working?
Well, the key issue in Auckland is that there is COVID-19 very active in the community, and a couple of hundred cases a day popping up in the community, many of which are now unlinked to each other, and that is not the case around the rest of the country.
Can a region move to orange without being at the 90% double dosed?
When we indicate, and we'll do this on or around the 29th, when we indicate what colour regions will go into the traffic light framework at, we'll also be indicating what we'll be looking for them to move, up or down those levels.
But vaccination rates will be a key indicator of your ability to move?
Oh, look, the two most important factors there, three most important factors there will be vaccination rates, the number of daily cases that we're seeing there, or the trend in the number of daily cases that we're seeing in each area, and the degree of hospitalisation that we're seeing in those areas.
So, but are you suggesting you could drop the 90% and move some regions to orange?
I think 90% is the sort of level of vaccination coverage you need to give people to really turn down the volume of risk on COVID-19. So at this point, we are still pushing hard to get every region to that 90% marker.
Because I'm wondering, Taupō, they've accepted they probably can't reach on the projections they've got double dose until the end of December, maybe later. So does that mean for R&V, for Christmas, we're getting a bill for R&V, Rhythm and Vines?
Look, it means that I think that let's see Taupō push hard on their vaccination. They can do it, and let's make sure that they're really pushing hard and that we're supporting them to push hard to get those vaccination rates up.
But it's a possibility we could be picking up the tab if you're saying 90% is a prerequisite potentially to move to orange.
Oh, look, all sorts of things are possibilities, but actually the greatest thing that we can do at this point is make sure we're pushing hard on vaccination.
What's the deal with the Northland border, right? Do you anticipate that's going to be a hard border?
Unlikely. You never rule anything out, but unlikely. But we acknowledge that based on where they're heading with their vaccination rates at the moment, Northland will almost certainly be at red, which means if people are leaving Auckland to go up into Northland, they're not going to be able to do a lot while they're up there.
Appreciate your time. That's COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins. So Aucklanders and those planning to visit are now free to plan with confidence. Our reporter Nick Trewbridge and cameraman Nick Monroe went to see how the news is going down.
After 3 months stuck in lockdown city, Aucklanders will be free from the 15th. So let's go and find out how they're feeling.
So hold on, leaving on the 15th of December. So go anywhere in the country. I reckon it's sweet, yeah, good.
His reaction shared by pretty much everyone as the news breaks on Ponsonby Road just after 1 p.m.
I think it's fantastic. Aucklanders need to get out and about. The rest of the country is just going to have faith that we're all vaccinated and we do the right thing. But yeah, we can't keep living like this, basically.
I'm very pleased about that, yes, that people can go and join their families. It's very good. Yes, thank you.
Travel plans are already in place. Aucklanders raring to go, packing their bags, booking their batches, leaving lockdown city in the rear view.
That's fantastic. I've got the month of January off and I'd booked a batch, so I was hoping I could go away. So that's brilliant news. That's awesome.
Taranaki. So yeah, there's plenty of surf down there, and I've got my cousin down there. So yeah, no, it's been pretty sweet, bro. I'm not that phased about it all, but yeah, if it's 15th, is that what it is? Yeah, sweet, cool.
I'm definitely going to go away as soon as we're allowed to.
For others, family reunions are front of mind. That's in the flesh, not of the Skype or Zoom variety.
My sister, she wants to go and join one of her sons who's further afield, and and her grandchildren. Yes, so she'll be very pleased.
While it's a green light on border busters, Auckland and the rest of the country will actually be sitting at red when it comes to other freedoms under that new traffic light system, which will kick in soon after November 29. That means, finally, Hospo can open with up to 100 people so long as vaccine certificates are checked.
People, they want to dine out to spend their time for doing just takeaway. It's crazy.
That's Bona Pizza owner Maya Komai, who says the last few months have been, well, we'll let her tell you.
It's been crazy. It is crazy. Honestly, it's everyone try to solve the problem, but it's not like this, because imagining everyone hanging out outside, 25 people, they're sitting outside, the public toilets are open, the shopping malls are open, we cannot be open. Inside of the little tiny place, we cannot serve people. We can clean their spaces after each customers they use, but it's been so tough.
But at last, some relief, sort of, with restrictions still tight.
For my situation, it's okay because I don't have a really big restaurant, but I have a friends of they having a restaurant for 100 people. Still, it's hard for them because for the holiday functions they usually get for the Christmas functions, they're having more than 100 people inside of their restaurant.
And of course, it'll soon be time to shed those long locks, a half-hearted mullet, in my case, with barbershops finally back at the red light, but only with certificates. Marita Mulving runs Shell Shock, a jewellery and eyewear shop on Ponsonby Road. Her neighbour, Takoya Barbershop, which sits deserted, the lights off, the chairs empty.
I don't think it's going to change much for us here in retail, but I think it will change things for the hairdressers and the beauticians and the massage therapists and people like that.
Finally, change, albeit with restrictions just down the road for Lockdown City and the rest of the nation, as it pulls up and waits at the red light.
Homai o whakaro, love to know your thoughts. Nō reira, anei nā kaupapa mō te hōtaka nei. December 15th, the borders open both ways if you're fully vaccinated or got a COVID result that shows you're COVID-free. What do you make of that? For it or against it? Let us know. Pātui mai, text me 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. The police will work with iwi to control the border north of Auckland when the gates open on December 15th. The government says that will ensure people can move through, but also give confidence to the people of Northland that necessary checks are in place. Ko taku manuhiri e nai nei, ko Hone Harawira, the Te Tai Tokerau Border Control spokesperson. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora, Lisa. Tēnā koe mō tō reo Māori.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, summer from hell, you're saying. Why?
The recommendation from the Prime Minister that the police will work with iwi to ensure that our territory is safe is actually a flat-out lie. Because she then followed it up to say there will be no hard borders and only spot checks. And I know, and the police know, spot checks are absolutely useless. I know police know this. Spot checks are absolutely useless in stopping the flood of Aucklanders. 7 months of lockdown, they're just going to come pouring into the north, absolutely pouring into the north. And they're not going to be slowed by anybody. Certainly not a policeman wanting to do a spot check on the Range Rover and me and the missus and the two of our three kids, one of whom is vaccinated. The other one, well, we just missed in Auckland. We'll get them done in Whangarei. And before you know it, all of the rules will be gone, and people will be able to go anywhere they like, and there will be no rules. So it's either hard borders or it's open season on Taupō. So that's what I say. Not trying to be rude about it. I'm just stating a fact.
Hone, did you have any kōrero with the government or government agencies prior to this announcement around the border to the north?
Well, no, because I was of the understanding that if a district health board area was not 90, then people couldn't come that way. What they're now saying is, well, bugger you, if Auckland's 90, we're coming your way. So that's my concern. We're not there yet, Lisa. We're a long way from there. I can honestly say that I've just come off a Zoom with some of the local health providers in Te Hiku, and I've been talking to the ones regularly from Ngāpuhi and Rawene and Whangaroa, even down into Whangana. Everybody's just killing themselves trying to get as many of our people vaccinated as possible. But because the same government that wants to open the borders is denying us access to critical medical data so we can identify the right people and hone in on them, we're way behind. And the facts say, not Hone Harawira, the facts say we won't hit 90 till January the 15th, which is when everybody stops coming to the north. So we'll be in dire straits.
So, Hone, if you had your way, if January is the date that you potentially could reach the 90% double vax, do you want to stay locked off till then?
Yeah, I'd say more resources to help us get to 90. Free up that medical data so we can concentrate on trying to get to the 90. And if we can get to the 90 earlier, I've got heaps of my relations down in Auckland when I come home. So I can't go to Auckland to see my mum. All of those sorts of things are really important to a whole lot of people, and that's just Māori. There's all of the Pākehā people who've got places up here to come, we've got families up here to come to. We'd love to have that happen, but not at the expense of the health, the well-being, and the very lives of some very high comorbidity type people in Tautokero, as in Tautokero Māori.
Hone, what's your main fear here? What in your view is the worst thing that could happen as a consequence of the border opening?
We are pretty much already at the limit of our self-isolation, of managing COVID in our communities now. We get a little bit more, we're going to need to go into hospitals. We've got 11 beds. That's where we are right now. A flood of Aucklanders on the 15th of December, and we had it. We have no capacity to manage the health and well-being of our own people at that point, and that's the disaster. So we're saying, please hold off. We'll do our best. And send us doctors, nurses, resources. Most importantly, free up that Ministry of Health data so we can find the right people at the right time. The sooner we can get there, the sooner we'll open the doors.
Ngā mihi mō te rā. Thank you for your kōrero this evening. That's Hone Harawira, who is spokesperson for the Te Tautokoro Border Control. Kia ora E te iwi e Hairiaki nei checkpoint. We'll have more on the shocking discovery at Pike River. Up to 3 unidentified bodies caught on camera deep in the mine. One mum hopes it will lead to someone being held accountable. Hope of a local America's Cup is still afloat, and level 2 marks the end of some mullets in Waikato. Homai o whakaro, we would love your feedback. Don't forget you can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz about anything you've heard on the programme this evening. It is time now for the headlines. Ane Amarama, mena pita pita kōrero.
Thanks, Lisa. A man whose son died in the Pike River Mine explosion says news that up to 3 bodies have been found comes as a shock. It's nearly 11 years since 29 miners were killed in the West Coast disaster. Images from boreholes drilled into the mine show human remains, but police say they are too far into the workings to be recovered. Rowdy Durbridge, whose son Dan was working in the area where the remains can be seen, says he understands there's a very high chance one of the bodies is his son's. National Party leader Judith Collins predicts a summer of chaos when the country moves to the new traffic light system. New Zealand will move to the new system sometime after November the 29th as part of the strategy to control the spread of COVID-19. Auckland and regions with low vaccination rates will go straight to red, the highest setting. The rest of the country will move to orange. Aucklanders now have more clarity about Christmas and the New Year, with the border opening from December the 15th for around a month. However, anyone wanting to travel out of the region will need to be double vaccinated or return a negative test a few days beforehand. The police will carry out spot checks on travellers, and anyone breaking the rules will be fined $1,000. More than 100,000 My Vaccine passes have been issued today after going live this morning. The certificate will be required in a range of public settings under the new traffic light system. It will provide proof of vaccination for events, hospitality, community sport and religious gatherings. And some of the recent COVID-19 cases are members of the Killer Bees gang. 194 new community cases have been reported today, and the Director General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, says a COVID positive case in Masterton is likely to be linked to a tangi rather than the gang. Those are the headlines. Our next news update will be at 6.
Kia ora rā e hoa, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku hoa e nai ko Nona Peltier, who's here to talk business. A2 Milk, Nona, is defending its performance over the past year at today's annual meeting of shareholders. What do they have to say for themselves?
Well, look, they're trying to restore, I guess, confidence from their shareholders who, the company's been battered with a slide in sales in their key China market. That's mostly because of the disruptions resulting from COVID. And look, the company had to issue 4 earnings downgrades in the 6 months that saw their share price slump by about 70%. That's hardly a kind of performance you want to front in front of your shareholders with, that's for sure. However, the chair, David Hearn, he defended the company's performance and said that really they had done what the best they could given the situation, and they're planning to vigorously defend any action that comes to court as a result. I mean, for example, there has been a confirmation that there's one class action lawsuit about the company's disclosures, and there's one that's rumored as well. So I guess it's a wait and see there, but in the meantime, the company is hoping for better days ahead.
International investors keen to get in on the ground floor of any New Zealand, bright startup. So what are they looking for?
Yeah, so we have been talking about this for a while. There's a lot of investment dollars sloshing around the New Zealand market, a lot of international investors. One in particular, a company called Blackbird Ventures, established a $60 million fund a couple of years back, well, actually 2019. And what they decided was that they wanted to invest in technology firms. Mostly they were looking for those bright, young, fledgling firms with had bold ideas, passionate founders with a eye to global expansion. And they said that they have really been looking very hard. They're still looking for more, and they're excited about some of the investments they've already made. But look, there's a lot of competition out there for these types of companies. It's never been better to go out and look for some capital if you're one of those startups with a fresh outlook.
And Nona, let's take a spin around the markets.
Right, so look, the dollar, that's the big dollar, the US dollar, it reached a 4.5-year high yesterday. So that did sort of impact our dollar. We are steady at just under 70 US cents, 96 Australian and 52.1 pence. And as we talked about A2 Milk, their share price ended down about 0.2%. And overall, the Asian markets were down as well. The local top 50 index, it fell 0.5%, or by 65 points to 12,837.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite, that's Nona Peltier with Business. There were some first-day nerves as Auckland primary schools swung open the gates after 3 months of online learning. Students from new entrants to Year 10 are allowed back, but with rules including separate groups and masks. Reporter Louise Tanouth and camera operator Marika Habazi have the story.
Bags are back on hooks, classrooms and whiteboards are full again, and chocolates fill teachers' lockers for the first day back at Rowandale Primary in Manurewa. Today, Year 5 and 6 are back, tomorrow it's Year 3 and 4, and Friday, Year 1 and 2.
Okay, so how do we feel about 5 more minutes? Yeah?
Teacher Emma Herbert is thrilled to be back with her students.
Honestly, initially I wanted to give them a hug. I wanted just to give them a hug and embrace them, but then I knew that I was like, no, just calm down.
It was overwhelming this morning, so she's changed the planned lessons for team building exercises. She says the goal for the next month is less about cramming in assessments and more about looking after everyone.
Our goal is just well-being, making sure that our kids feel safe, making sure that they know that they're cared for and that we're doing everything that we can to keep each other safe. And then all the business and stuff will come later. But at the moment, our pride and joy is just making sure that they're okay.
We managed to interrupt some of the chaos to chat to the boys' club table. Crisando, Stephen, Ronaldo and Leo are happy to be back.
Yeah, it feels cool. To see your friends. We get to do some work with your friends. To see my teachers, see my friends. Just get away from the house. We're the only boys, the 4 of us.
There are staggered start times for the different year groups, and from next week, a bubble will be available for parents that need to send their kids back full-time. Principal Carl Vasso explains from pick-up to drop-off, they've factored in 3.2 restrictions.
So we opened the gates at 8:45. The children are greeted at the gate and walked up, sanitised, then they'll sit in lines in their bubbles. We provide toast and a bit of Milo if they're wanting that then. Walk them to their classrooms. We are also fortunate to have lunches in schools, so the children will be provided with lunch. They also have water bottles so that we can avoid using the drinking fountains. And then at the end of the day, 2:30, they're greeted at the front gate by their parents who do not enter the school unless they've made an arrangement to do so.
They've got about a third of each year coming back. The rest, he says, will do so in their own time. With COVID's heavy presence in the community, he can understand why.
I'm also very anxious and still very wary of the situation in relation to the cases in the community, especially in Manurewa, where we've seen recently quite a few cases coming from our community.
And the bubbles extend to playtime. A favourite for the students, but extra work for the teachers, making sure no bubbles burst. Over at Newmarket Primary, they're pleased the school gates are open again. All years are welcomed back at once, but in different bubbles spread out in the school. Principal Wendy Coford says they're trying to strike a balance between online and physical learning, with about half their students keen to come back.
So on the Monday and the Friday of each week, we'll have all children off-site, and the teachers will be looking at how we build a connection between those children that are at home and those children that are at school.
And for some students, today was their first ever day, one they won't forget in 3.2 restrictions.
We had 5 children, their first day at school today, so the parents were great. They understood that this is a little bit of a different context. Their children actually waved goodbye. I said to the parents they were welcome to come on site, but no, children were very confident, waved goodbye.
Joanna Brown's back in the classroom with her Year 3 and 4 students at last.
Woke up this morning feeling a little bit nervous. We talked to the kids about that as well, because they had a mixture of feelings of excitement and nerves coming back, but they've settled in really well.
But the different bubbles are a little confusing.
We have 2 bubbles on this floor that are separated with a barrier, and they do have separate toilets, they have separate break times, and that's just to make sure that everyone stays safe.
Yeah, and is it easy for them to understand that they're separate to the other group, or is it a bit confusing?
It's been, I think a bit tough for them. They've been waving at each other through the barrier.
For the next month, this will be how school operates. A little different, but the fun things are still on offer, like music class, albeit with the teachers zooming in.
And if you are listening to that on radio, we'll put the video from Marika and Louise's piece on our webpage. The news human remains have been discovered inside the Pike River Mine comes just days ahead of the 11th anniversary of the deadly explosion. It's left families in shock, while others have expressed anger and frustration at the process that's led to this point. Ōtautahi reporter Kim Moody has the story.
It's an announcement 29 devastated families have waited years for.
We've recovered some images from the boreholes that confirm 2 deaths, 2 bodies, with the possibility of a 3rd body there as well.
Superintendent Peter Reid says the images, taken late last week, were from the furthest reaches of the mine, as far from the entrance as they could be.
And it's not possible for us to recover them. While we've been unable to identify the remains, we're working with forensic experts to see what we can do to confirm the identities. Based on the investigation that we've done to date, we know that there's 6 to 8 people that were working in that area.
One of the miners working in the area where remains were found was Dan Durbridge. His dad Rowdy says it's a shock.
I'm still processing it all, but it's a good thing. It hurts, but it's a good thing.
Police have been investigating boreholes from the site as part of their criminal investigation into the tragedy, with the aim of proving or eliminating theories from the Royal Commission of Inquiry on what triggered the first explosion. Anna Osborne, whose husband Milton died in the mine, says it's an emotional day.
We fought for this. We fought really hard to get these boreholes done so that an investigation, a proper investigation, can take place. Our men deserve that, and we fought so hard, and for the police to be able to get the boreholes done and get these images is gold.
The minister responsible for Pike River re-entry, Andrew Little, says the findings will help that investigation, but he doubts there's any chance of recovering the remains.
Some family members wanted us to try to get through the roof floor, which is the least safe part of the mine site at the moment. Even if we were able to get through that, it is highly unlikely we could physically have got to that part of the mine anyway. That is the most remote part of the mine.
Superintendent Reid says better technology has helped them 11 years on.
Well, the imagery is providing us new information, and information that we would have not otherwise got because we were never going to be able to go into that part of the mine. So any information that we can get, and the quality of the imagery is really, really good compared to what we've had before. So that is actually assisting us. It's been really, really helpful.
He says it means police are one step closer to a potential prosecution, something Rowdy Durbridge says is crucial.
We can't let 29 men go to work and get killed and let the people responsible for the area in which they worked and walk away unscathed. And with a bit of luck, it'll all help with the prosecution.
Superintendent Reid is travelling to the coast this evening to brief the families on the situation.
Josh Ufa was one of 2 Australians killed in the Pike River Mine explosion 11 years ago this Friday. His partner Raquel Weaver was pregnant with their daughter Erica, and the family was planning to move back to Australia that Christmas. Speaking from Queensland this afternoon, Josh's mum, Joanne Ufa, said she received a call earlier today with the news.
Oh, well, I was shocked actually because, well, one, it just appears that every time an anniversary rolls around, something happens. There's, some announcement or, something to sort of rock us every year. But then I wasn't expecting that at all, so I was quite shocked.
Did you remain confident that, remains could be and would be found?
It really wasn't on my radar, I guess, from this part of the investigation and evidence gathering. I thought maybe during the recovery, re-entry phase, recovering the drift, I thought there might have been a possibility that remains might be found there. But once that was finalised, I didn't really think about it again.
So how does this change things?
Well, for me, I guess, it doesn't really change things. I mean, I don't believe that they would be my son's remains for I guess from the area that they were located in. He wasn't working in that area. But I just, I really do feel for all the families, because it's the what ifs and unknowns, and now that the mine is to be sealed, and they won't be retrieved or recovered. It's sort of just sent everyone, I'm sure, into a bit of a spin, to be honest.
What do you want to know? What information do you hope you may be able to find out as a result of this discovery?
Obviously from an evidence point of view, if it makes anything more clear as to what happened, I think that can only be good. But I just know that recovery is off the table, so I just don't know how to feel about that, and whether it's a good thing that maybe they hadn't been found, or now families are going to have to deal with, can they be identified, or it's just so much to take in, really.
Do you hope that there will be charges as a consequence?
I have always believed that, whether it's one or multiple people need to be held accountable for what happened, and whether that's charges, I would just like to see them face the courts and explain what really happened that day.
Joanne Ufa speaking there. It is 10 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He muriaki ina pita pita kōrero after the news at 6. Aucklanders have a way out of the super city from December 15, so where could they be headed? Excitement from some Northlanders about visitors returning to the rohe is tinged with anxiety about the COVID risk they bring. Tai Tukaro's a long way off hitting the 90% vaccination target. Just 72% have had both shots and 58% of Māori. And while restrictions, negative tests and vaccinations aim to protect vulnerable communities, huge questions remain around how that will be managed at the border. Anei te kai repoata, Anita Blake Person.
After months of being cut off from the rest of Aotearoa, Tai Tukaro's trademark beaches will open again this summer. But Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern today signalled the border with Auckland won't be scrapped altogether.
Now on the northern boundary and the gateway to Northland, the police will work with iwi to ensure people can move, but also that the people of Northland have confidence in the checks that are in place.
Te Runanga o Ngāti Whātua has been working with police at the Te Hana checkpoint since Auckland lockdown, but Chief Operations Officer Anthony Thompson isn't sure how the summer border will run.
There's a bit of a saying, and if you're from Dargaville, it's as clear as the Northern Wairoa. We don't know yet. What we do know is we've been working operationally with the frontline policing teams and some of the Crown officials. So we know we've got a relationship operationally. What we really need to know now is what the high-level management plan is.
While he says it would be helpful to have a border to check travellers, it's not possible for every car coming north, and there needs to be a robust plan around vaccine passports.
For those locals that know the road from the Puhoi tunnels, Warkworth, Wellsford, Kaiwaka and the Brenduans, in the summer, the whole road is gridlocked. If we had a hard border, our feeling is the gridlock would be worse.
There's about a month for the details to be worked out. Whangarei Mayor Cheryl Mai says moving into the new traffic light framework should help with the preparation.
So my understanding at that point is that Auckland goes into the red, and any areas that have low vaccination levels will also be in the red, and that of course includes Northland.
She says people will have questions about the border and they'll be worked through over the coming weeks. Cut-off Northland tourism businesses have been hard hit over the past few months. Craig Johnson runs Paihia Dive and says while not every business will make it to the December 15th reopening, it gives people certainty and something to work towards.
I'm excited to have a date and have some certainty. So just having something that we can plan towards is so important, and that it's planning towards something before Christmas is even better.
He's wary about unvaccinated Northlanders being at risk. More than 30,000 eligible people have yet to have any shots. And right now, Whangarei locals are weighing up COVID risks with summer celebrations.
Can't really see it's going to make any difference. The COVID's already going everywhere in New Zealand, so what the heck?
I feel good if I can see my family and they can come and see me. It's been a while. It does make you a little bit worried, so wonder if the virus is going to come with them.
I'm kind of excited that I get to see family from Auckland, although I'm pretty hesitant about the people further north who aren't vaccinated and the problems that might bring to that community.
The influx of people to Northland, we have to try and reach our target so we are also able to have a summer with everybody else.
Well, a lot of feedback coming in on this issue. This one from Kath. Not often do I agree with Hone, but the man is right. We're averaging 180 new cases a day, majority in Auckland, despite the so-called amazing vax rates. The regions cannot deal with a swarm of Aucklanders where hospitals just will not cope. It's hard enough providing for our own populations. It's going to be a very busy, difficult time for us in health this Christmas. Kevin says, with respect, this is elitism. Auckland region overly concentrates the wealth and resources of this country. Unfortunately, they also contain COVID cases skyrocketing. Northlanders will be decimated by the flood of Aucklanders bringing COVID with them. Someone else reckons there's a simple solution for the north. Get vaccinated now. Kay from Auckland says, how ridiculous. Why are the non-vaccinated being able to travel? Happy for the borders to be open for those of us who are sensible. The non-vaccinated should begin to experience the consequences. How many times have we heard that someone left Auckland with a clear test only to develop symptoms while visiting Te Papa? And this is a common theme of our feedback about non-vaccinated people being able to travel over the border. Mike says, why the relaxation of the vaccine requirement completely undermines the argument for vaccination. What was the point then of ever getting vaccinated? Thanks for your feedback. Keep it coming. Text us on 2101. New Zealanders' tickets to summer have been released and they're flying off the digital shelves. The Ministry of Health had processed more than 100,000 vaccination certificates or My Vaccine passes at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The passes will soon be essential if you want to go to large events, hospitality and retail outlets and faith-based gatherings. Our political reporter Annika Smith has more.
With just weeks to go until the traffic light system lights up, New Zealand's vaccine pass has arrived. Demand was running hot this morning, with many logging in to My COVID record to find overloading or error messages. Here's technologist Andrew Chen.
When there are 3.5 million people trying to access any IT system, it's going to struggle. So for folks who are struggling to get one this morning, just take a deep breath. You don't need to have it today. If you try again in a couple of days, it'll probably be a little bit better.
Anyone who is double vaccinated can now request their My Vaccine pass either online or by phone. Age Concern estimates there are tens of thousands of older people who don't have internet access in Tāmaki Makaurau alone. Its Auckland CEO, Kevin Lamb, says only old school solutions will reach everyone.
Often the only way of guaranteeing an older person, every older person will be able to access it, is by it physically falling through their letterbox, giving them really simple instructions on what they need to do.
Auckland City Missioner Helen Robinson is also concerned about those struggling to make ends meet. She says those going without food are most likely going without internet too.
It would be very common that we hear for families who we support for food who simply don't have access to the internet. So again, that requires another level of thinking around how we can support those families to download the QR code and have a printable version so that they can carry that around for them.
The government insists it's given plenty of consideration to making the vaccine pass as accessible as possible. The COVID-19 Response Minister, Chris Hipkins, says he expects a posted hard copy will be popular, but walk-ins should soon be available.
I know that for a number of older New Zealanders, that's actually going to be their preferences to get that hard copy sent to them. And we're also looking at walk-up options as well. I haven't got details on that today, but the ability for people to go to places in order to get their certificates printed.
ACT Party leader David Seymour says the government should go one step further and just send vaccine passes to the elderly.
I think people have been paying taxes for 40 years and have come through the many struggles, including the last 2 years. The least we could do is send them a letter saying, here's your pass. I mean, there's not that many people in that age group, but they have done a lot for the country.
As for businesses, an optional verification app to check vaccine passes is in final trials and should be ready within the next few weeks. Access to essential services like supermarkets, dairies, pharmacies, all health services and petrol stations will not require a pass. For those with vaccinated children, you can download and carry your child's vaccine pass for them.
And some feedback on this issue. This person says, I live in Christchurch, 86 years old and double jabbed. Once the Auckland bubble bursts, we will see COVID in our communities. I'm very concerned about Māori communities in rural areas. We have to do things gradually, one change every 2 weeks so we can see how many cases we get. If it explodes, we might have to go into lockdown again before Christmas. Another listener says, I'd be a lot more patient with lockdowns if I could go to the hairdresser. I'll tautoko that. And on Pike River, this one, really feel for Bernie Monk and the families he represents, but it is time to move on for now. And Paul says they cannot be safely recovered, unfortunately. Leave them in peace with their workmates. Another along the same line says persistent demands from the family to keep going do not make it safe or meet the costs. 2 governments have decided to close the mine to further investigation, and that is for safety reasons. And on getting the jab and going over the border, we're frustrated, this listener says. My family is very compliant and we are tired of the New Zealanders who have taken their sweet time while we do the mahi.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Kia ora, I'm Marama Tipole. A man who lost his son in the Pike River disaster says families were given no heads up before today's shock revelation that human remains have been found. Images from boreholes drilled by the police show the remains of 2 bodies and possibly a third in a part of the mine the police say cannot be reached. Bernie Monk told Checkpoint the authorities were too quick to seal the bodies inside.
We actually went up there and stood at the gate and asked them not to seal the mine up to after the police had done their boreholes, and they still did it. So they just ignored us. I'm just so frustrated with the way that this has been done.
Bernie Monk says it was insensitive to tell families 2 days before the 11th anniversary of the disaster, in which 29 men, including his son Michael, died. The COVID-19 Response Minister says it is possible Aucklanders could have more freedoms before the end of the month. The government announced today the region's border will open from December the 15th for about a month, provided travellers carry a vaccine certificate or proof of a negative test. In addition, the whole country will move into the traffic light framework when Auckland does, sometime around November the 29th. Chris Hipkins has told Checkpoint he wouldn't rule out changes to the current settings before then. The National Party says the announcement about the traffic light system opens New Zealand up to a summer of chaos. When the system kicks in, Auckland will go into the higher setting of red, as will any regions with low vaccination rates. Everywhere else will move to orange. Judith Collins says this means 2 more weeks of confusion.
It just couldn't be any more farcical. And for people who are stuck in lockdown in Auckland, I've got a feeling people are going to be so upset that the government has yet again not delivered any certainty other than the certainty of chaos.
Judith Collins also says basic questions such as how checks will be done at the Auckland border remain unanswered. Well over 100,000 My Vaccine passes have been issued today. The passes, New Zealand's official vaccination certification, went live this morning. The Health Ministry says that by 4 this afternoon, 111,000 had been processed. They can be requested through the My COVID Record website or by calling 0800 222 478. However, ACT leader David Seymour says the pass could be mailed directly to people over 65. He says age-friendly options are needed.
There are still a group of people in our community who use the mail. They'd like to be sent a letter, and I think that option should be available, and perhaps it should even be the default, say, for people over 65, to send them a paper copy.
Pharmac has decided to fund a cheaper generic version of a medicine for people with autoimmune conditions. About 6,500 patients with conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease currently receive fortnightly injections of Humira, the second biggest spend in the Pharmac budget. The agency's Chief Medical Officer, David Hughes, says Amgevita is about a quarter of the price.
And increasingly, with these monoclonal antibodies, we're finding new and improved uses for them. So I think there are 6 or 7 new indications in terms of the funding, and that'll equal about 700 new patients.
David Hughes says Pharmac will keep funding Humira for the small number who can't switch brands. The 3 people who died in a crash just north of Christchurch on Sunday have been named. They were Jixuan Yinhu, who was 67, Yingwan, aged 48, and 8-year-old Guhan or Caroline Yin. They all lived in Christchurch. The police say a 4th person remains in hospital in a stable condition, and their investigation continues. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, the art of releasing new music with students of Hamilton's Wintec School of Media Arts. Once they did it with CDs, now they're online. Sam Takani, sexpert, HIV awareness campaigner, man about K Road, on his new book, Please Call Me Jesus. Because radio broadcasting's 100 years old in this country today, we're playing around to spot the old theme on tonight's Hump Quiz on Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
RNZ National, looking at our weather forecast for Met Surface to midnight Thursday, Northland, Auckland, Waikato, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupō. A few showers. Mostly fine tomorrow though, but isolated afternoon showers in Bay of Plenty. For Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, mostly fine. Isolated showers about the ranges tomorrow afternoon and evening. Waitomo to Wellington, including Taihape, fine. Isolated showers should be clearing tonight, but returning to Taihape tomorrow afternoon and evening. For Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, scattered showers with possible thunderstorms in Nelson. Showers clearing in Nelson and coastal Marlborough and Canterbury tomorrow. Bulla and Western, occasional showers, some heavy with isolated thunderstorms. Fine spells increasing in Bulla for tomorrow. Otago, scattered showers with thunderstorms possible in North Otago, but they should be clearing tonight. Isolated showers in the east tomorrow. For Southland and Fiordland, cloudy with showers, clearing in Southland tomorrow. And for the Chatham Islands, cloudy with brief rain. It's coming up to 6 minutes past 6.
Nā mihi mō te rā, kia ora anō. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. 4 more weeks. That's how long Aucklanders have to wait until they're free to leave the city for their summer break. There's a catch though. All travellers must be fully vaccinated or carry proof of a negative test from the past 72 hours or risk a $1,000 fine. By the time the borders reopen, the whole country will have shifted to a new traffic light system, dictating freedoms based on vaccination certificates. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
92 days Aucklanders have languished in lockdown and every day has taken its toll.
Oh, terrible. It's been a disaster, hasn't it? Frustrated, want to get on with life, miss the simple things.
It's a constant refrain on the super city's streets, just the hope of a holiday keeping many going.
Can we get out?
It can't come soon enough.
Today, confirmation freedom is coming. Prepare for the end of Fortress Auckland. There's a new system for the summer season.
Today, I can announce that from the 15th of December, people travelling out of Auckland who have either been fully vaccinated or have a negative test 72 hours prior to departure will be able to leave Auckland and visit other parts of the country.
Circle the date, that's December 15. People flying out of Auckland will have their vax or test status checked at check-in. Those driving in or out may be stopped by police, with rule breakers slapped with a $1,000 fine. Jacinda Ardern says the regime will run for just over a month. Then it's no conditions at all on movement.
We are in a new phase in our fight against COVID-19.
That new phase means a new approach, and not just in Auckland, but all over the country. Get used to red, orange and green. The traffic light system was supposed to kick in once all DHBs hit 90% vaxxed. That's now been accelerated. On November 29, Cabinet Ministers will meet. Soon after, the whole country will shift into the new setting. Auckland will start on the highest setting, that's red, as will regions with low vaccination rates. Everyone else will start at orange.
Prepare for the new framework. We need to make sure that everyone is ready to go with their vaccine passes and as businesses ready to operationalise the new framework because it's coming very soon.
The new framework uses vaccine passes to determine freedoms. For example, under the red light, there's no haircuts or gym sessions for the unvaxxed. A restaurant can choose to serve only vaccinated customers, up to 100, or they can serve anyone, but only takeaways.
We have greater protections by being in this framework than we do our current one.
We are seeing cases, of course, despite best efforts, escape from Auckland, and having all regions of the country being able to move on to the protection afforded by the vaccination passes sooner rather than later was our very strong advice.
The virus is already spreading beyond Auckland's borders. New cases were announced today in Northland, Auckland, Waikato, Taupō and one case in Christchurch, another South Island skier. Today's announcement has caused alarm right across Parliament. Gone are the days of consensus over COVID-19. For ACT and National, the government is dragging its feet.
Aucklanders have done the right thing. They deserve freedom now. It just couldn't be any more farcical.
And for the Greens and Māori Party, it's all much too hasty.
We're not happy about that. We think that's a mistake.
Once again, she's ignored her own Māori advice.
We have a Prime Minister that's very intentional on making sure that Māori are left behind and that Māori are the worst to suffer. It's absolutely disgraceful.
While I know there will be some who will think our moves too fast, others too slow, I have no doubt that this is the best plan to keep us safe and allow us to connect once again with friends and loved ones.
For Aucklanders, it's been a long wait. Just 4 more weeks to go.
And as you heard there, Aucklanders will be free to leave the city on December the 15th, provided they're fully vaccinated or have a negative test within 72 hours of leaving. Well, joining me now is the Taupō Mayor, David Trewavas. David, good news, bad news or indifferent news?
Kia ora, good evening. Well, I believe very good news. Probably the timing's about right. Certainly, as the Prime Minister said, could have been earlier, could have been later, but the thing is, it's about right. I think as long as you're double vaxxed, you're on your way south to the beautiful tourism spot of Lake Taupō.
If you're double vaxxed or have had a negative test in the past 72 hours, how do you feel about that component of the rule?
I think that's fair enough, isn't it? It's quite clear that the insurance policy against this particular pandemic is getting vaxxed, and as simple as that, or having a clear, there is an option there for a clear test to come too. So I think they've been very fair, but we would certainly welcome everyone with open arms as long as they've had those two processes done.
How will you know, though? Because they're only going to be spot checks, so what confidence can you have?
Yeah, well, it's up to the Kiwis to look after fellow Kiwis, isn't it? Be fair about this, carry on. If you're going to, not tell the truth or whatever, it's, the consequences are pretty sad, really. And think about your fellow Kiwis and give the kids a break, give the kids a holiday as well. But, let's do it within the rule of the law.
So, 15 December, the gates fly open. It's a close-run thing for Christmas, right? Financially, does it give your businesses down there enough of that busy time in the lead-up to Christmas?
Well, it gives us something, doesn't it? Things have been, to be honest, pretty flat. Not as a lot of other parts of the country have been a lot flatter than us. We've been okay, but we've certainly missed those Aucklanders. Up to 30% of our turnover in our retail shops, with various goods and services industries. We are starting to feel the effects for sure. So give those good hard-earning Kiwis a bit of a break, and gives us a 10-day sort of run-in, doesn't it? So hopefully, we will see them.
David, how are your vaccination rates looking like?
We're a bit light, to be honest, and that's a bit concerning from the mayoral office, that's for sure. But as of tonight, or as of Sunday night, we've got about 2,000 odd people to get with their first vaccine. So we're looking at about 72, 73%. 83%, sorry.
For double dosed or single?
Single dose, 82 to 83%. So we'll put a big push on now to get to 90, and the second dose is about 72. So
you could get stuck. You could get stuck in the red traffic light, which won't be a happy place for you, because you'll actually have fewer freedoms than you do now, won't you?
Absolutely. So that's why we've just got to get these locals out and about. And please, if you're not sure about it, talk to the health professionals. There's plenty of people available, but it will affect everyone if we cannot get to that 90%. That's for sure.
Yeah, so for your town, what are the consequences if you are still sitting during part of the summer below that 90% and you are stuck in the red zone?
Yeah, I haven't had to look at the exact details. Sorry, I've been quite busy this afternoon, but as to what the consequences are. But they tell me hospitality, all that sort of thing is going to be totally is a lot harder to operate. And
yep, you can only have 100 people with a vaccination certificate if you're at red, and close contact businesses, hairdressers, indoors, gyms, that kind of stuff, not allowed.
Not allowed, yeah. Well, that would be a disaster for us, to be honest.
If you don't use vaccination certificates, right? So that's off the cards.
Right, sure, yeah. So that's a real disaster for us, to be honest. We normally swell, base population about 40,000. We normally get up to 80 or 100,000 people at Christmas. So if you've got all those people coming and they can't go to those facilities, well, I'd be very, very disappointed, that's for sure. So now's the challenge for us to get those numbers up, and we'll be doing everything we can to do that.
You want to be orange or green, eh, David?
Absolutely. And I think the country certainly would love us to be too. So, my challenge to our local people is to get those numbers sorted, and we welcome the people with open arms and a beautiful welcome in the Lake Taupō district.
Good to talk to you, David. That's David Trewavas, who's the Taupō Mayor. Hamiltonians are settling into their new freedoms, with hairdressers, gyms and hospitality enjoying the return to level 2, some even doing so with balloons. Parts of Waikato and King Country were in level 3 for just over 6 weeks, with a total of 265 COVID cases since the outbreak began. Our reporter Leah Tebbit went out to see how people were spending their first day with eased restrictions.
Gone are the days of Hamiltonians rolling out of bed and into their morning meeting. By 8 a.m, cars were rushing about for the school drop-off before heading back to their first day in the office. Grey Street kitchen manager Dennis Sue says he was not sure of customers getting their coffee fix on the way to work.
Oh yeah, I feel first thing very, very weird, but people very enjoy because they've been home for too long. They're just very happy to be back.
However, some customers weren't in a rush and were soaking up their new freedom to sit back and enjoy a coffee with friends.
Sitting down and relaxing is much better than maybe feeling a bit on edge, because when you're standing up and having a coffee, people might look at you thinking, no, you shouldn't be doing that.
Across the road, a line was forming for the barber shop. Those waiting for the sound of scissors snipping away were more than happy to stand in line.
I usually get a cut every 2 weeks, so yeah.
You're needing it?
Yeah, very much so. A couple inches, definitely. I'm not dragging me down, but I like to get my hair tidy.
On the other side of the city, Rose Lund said she has never been more excited to go to work. She owns Zigzag Hair Salon and is already booked up until Christmas.
I've lived on the phone for like a day and a half and super clean up at the salon. It's just been crazy because I've rung over 300 clients.
Miss Lund says clients walking into the salon today were looking ready for a hair revival.
There's been some hacking and they just took like my mop out the back. No shape. Well, they look all right, but they're just long.
Back in the city, River Kitchen owner Maria Sania says it's been rejuvenating to hear laughter in her cafe again. She says catering orders and her regulars returning kept staff busy throughout the day.
Yeah, definitely, probably at least double or triple of what we were having in like lockdown in level 3.
There are around 22,000 office workers in Hamilton CBD who are helping keep the inner city businesses alive.
It is almost 18 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's one of Australia's most high-profile missing child cases, but now police say they're hopeful of an imminent breakthrough in the case of 3-year-old William Tyrrell, who disappeared while playing at his foster grandmother's home 7 years ago. The BBC's Phil Mercer reports.
For 7 years, there's been no sign of William Tyrrell. Australian police now believe they could be close to a significant breakthrough.
Tonight, police narrow the search for William Tyrrell to one person of interest, investigating whether the toddler fell from a balcony.
The little boy in a Spider-Man suit vanished without a trace in Kendal, New South Wales.
A car has been seized by investigators. They continue to comb the house where the 3-year-old was last seen and surrounding bushland. Experts, including a forensic anthropologist and an archaeologist, have been brought in to help look for new evidence in William Tyrrell's disappearance. The New South Wales Police Minister David Elliott hopes the mystery will soon be solved.
Police wouldn't be deploying resources, wouldn't be putting this energy into a search of this magnitude unless they were confident that they would be able to get at least some extra information relating to the disappearance of William. We've also got the added ability of the forensics team, and of course we've got to make sure that all of the processes are made in accordance with due process so that if there's a conviction it'll stick.
There was euphoria when 4-year-old Cleo Smith was found in Western Australia earlier this month. She'd been missing for 18 days. The case of William Tyrrell is unlikely to have such a joyous ending. The police have confirmed they were looking for his remains.
Action now is what civil society leaders from the Pacific are calling on after the outcome of COP26 climate summit left them deeply disappointed. The new global deal to phase out coal doesn't go far enough, according to some Pacific islands who have been left feeling sidelined. The lack of commitment from some developed countries puts the Pacific in peril. Alicia Foon has more.
The global climate negotiations concluded over the weekend in Glasgow with the new global deal on climate to phase down coal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. But from the Pacific Islands' perspective, the deal falls short of the ambitious action needed to ensure a future for people on the front lines. Reverend James Bhagwan says the Pacific is facing the impacts of climate change now.
We know the voice has been heard, but these developed countries continue to subsidize fossil fuel industries, to slow movement on loss and damage. It's obvious that they know what we want from the Pacific, from Pacific and global civil society, but the only conclusion we can draw is that they don't care.
Pacific leaders feel frustrated at the watered-down language on phasing down rather than phasing out coal, a last-minute change of wording led by China and India. Director of the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Programme, Kosi Latu, says developed countries have let down the Pacific in what is a matter of life and death.
We have a history of broken promises. And so for us, even though 1.5 is firmly, I guess, in the document, it's what is done, delivered on the ground that matters now. You know, we've had enough of, as I said, pledges and announcements. We want to see, real action delivered on the ground. Through politics around this whole issue, for us in the Pacific, this is a matter of survival. some of our countries may not be around.
There was also a lack of strong commitment for funding to pay for loss and damage suffered by Pacific nations due to the climate crisis.
We are not the ones that need convincing. It's the big emitters that need to be convinced. It's the countries that keep talking about, net zero at 2060, 2070. You got to be kidding. That's too late. We're probably under the water by then, Climate finance really needs to be unpacked so that then vulnerable Pacific Island countries are able to access climate finance quickly. We must be able to have more funding on adaptation than just mitigation. And that's what's needed. It's just it's as simple as that.
Although a third of the Pacific Islands leaders were unable to make COP26 due to COVID-19 travel restrictions, Mr. Bhagwan says Pacific voices were still strong. Fijian leader from the Pacific Islands Climate Action Network, Lavitna Langiseru, says although there were some small wins, the conference was far from inclusive.
This is one of the most exclusionary COP ever. There were moments where civil society were being kicked out of the rooms. The losses sort of outnumbers what the wins were from this particular COP.
Even if all commitments are met, experts now predict the world will still see 2.4 degrees Celsius warming by the end of the century. Many civil leaders are saying they will continue calling for action in what has become a fight for survival to preserve the Pacific for future generations.
Tear gas and water cannon have been used against migrants trying to cross into Poland from Belarus. It's as violence erupted, with videos showing migrants throwing stones and other objects at Polish forces. For weeks, thousands of people have been gathering at the border trying to reach the European Union. The BBC's Steve Rosenberg is there.
First, they'd asked to be let in. Now they were demanding. In Belarus, the migrants had run out of patience.
Well, these are Polish water cannon being employed, and that is because around midday, migrants on the Belarusian side of the border started throwing stones and rocks and branches, and all chaos has broken out. The Polish forces have responded with water, but also with gas. It's quite difficult to breathe.
We don't have life here. For night, I'm five night. I'm not sleeping.
For 2 hours, the border crossing was like a battleground. The European Union says Belarus is using migrants as weapons to destabilise Europe. The Belarusian soldiers stood and watched. They did nothing to stop the migrants who were storming the border. Why not? I asked this officer. His reply, no comment. And while water cannon fought off the attack on the EU's border, the young and the vulnerable took shelter. Belarus may have engineered this crisis, but that doesn't change the fact that it's people who are suffering.
The rules for the next America's Cup have been released, but the wait continues for a venue. Team New Zealand has confirmed the next America's Cup will take place in 2024. A location will be locked in by March. Wherever it happens, the sailing will be cutting it fine, with the Paris Olympics forcing some of the world's top sailing talent to choose between medals or the old mug. Felicity Reid reports.
Cost cutting is at the core of the protocol for the 37th America's Cup, and Team New Zealand boss Grant Dalton says pushing the next America's Cup out a year to 2025 to avoid sailing in an Olympic year would have cost teams too much. Several New Zealand Olympians were involved in Team New Zealand's last campaign, and British Olympian Giles Scott was on board Britannia. Dalton admits top sailors may be forced to choose between an Olympics or America's Cup campaign.
We'll keep far enough from the Olympics by, say, if we're in the Northern Hemisphere, we'll be finished by the end of June. If we're in the Southern Hemisphere, we'll be finished sort of middle of March. So in that respect, there's a gap, but then all the training, etc., would make it quite hard to do both.
While Olympians Peter Billing and Blair Tuke have yet to sign on for the Cup defence, Dalton believes he's got a deep talent pool to call on. Tightened nationality rules require 100% of the crew to be passport holders of the country they're representing or to have sailed for the team in the last regatta. Or, like Team New Zealand's latest recruit, multi-world champion sailor Australian Nathan Alteridge, have lived in the country in the last 18 months.
There's this sort of, he's here to replace Burling. That's not the case at all. He's here to increase our strength. If he ends up on the race boat, great. Then we'll even be stronger. When we start match racing, 2 identical AC40s, we've got great depth with Josh Jr. and Andy Maloney and Glenn Ashby. And now we've got Nate.
Crew sizes will drop from 11 sailors to 8 for the next regatta, but the class of boat, the AC75 foiling monohulls, remain the same. Former America's Cup sailor and Cup commentator Peter Lester says with fewer crew, there will need to be more technology on board.
The boats are very energy hungry, and by reducing the crew numbers means that will be substituted by probably more battery systems on the boat or more hydraulic accumulator systems on the boat.
Both the Defender and the Challenger of Record want to see more than 3 challenges on the start line in 2024 and have designed aspects of the protocol to reflect that. Each team will only be allowed 1 boat, some information will be shared, and some technology supplied. However, the Chief Technical Director for the Challenger of Record, James Allison, has a warning for potential teams reading the hefty rulebook and considering putting in a challenge when the entry period opens next month.
It's a sport where everything has to be right or nothing is right. You clearly have to have the best understanding of the physics of the boat so that you can come up with a concept that will be quicker than everyone else's. But no use having that mastery if you can't manufacture it, if you can't design that physics into parts that are actually realisable on the water. No point in doing that if you don't have a logistics system capable of getting it out to the event, or a commercial system and a marketing system able to generate the money to do that. And finally, no point in putting together all those competitive elements if you don't then have the sailors able to do the job on the water.
Late entries for the America's Cup will be accepted up until the end of March 2023. At least by then, they will know where they'll be sailing.
Some more of your thoughts before we head off. This is about the discovery of at least 2 bodies in the Pike River Mine. Potentially a third, police are saying. They reckon they can't reach them and they're yet to be identified. This listener says, for people saying it is all too hard, re Pike River, and leave it be, remember the men that went to work and died. This needs to be investigated and the bodies found will provide clear evidence of what happened. This is about all New Zealanders. On the border and Aucklanders being able to travel freely from the 15th of December. This one in, tell Auckland they're welcome in Ekatahuna. Great place for a holiday or a wee break. Real Kiwi country. Thank you for the invite. We really appreciate it. That's about all we've got time for. The late news team will keep you updated throughout the evening. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi o Pōpō tomorrow from 5 a.m. on First Up. They speak to the Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson about the cost of keeping Aucklanders locked up until December 15. Have a great night.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Anna Osborne, whose husband Milton died in the Pike River Mine explosions, says